Welcome to Biology My Passion. I am Soumya Harikrishna. Let us start with the chapter Life Processes. So I request you to keep a paper or a notebook with you and take down what all points I am giving on the boards for a better learning. Simply don't sit and listen and it will go out of your mind. So take the points I will be giving in the form of notes. Okay. So the living organisms are there all around. And we see them and we can easily distinguish living organisms and non-living organisms. Because living organisms have got certain characteristic features unique to them. They need food, they move around, they make noise, all this. So all these are kind of movements. So these movements are characteristics of living things. But all movements may not be visible. So, if you go into the level of our molecules or cellular level, within each cell again movements are happening. So, we can say that the most basic characteristic of living thing is molecular movement. Now, about virus when we are talking, we do not know whether they are living or non-living. We have not included them anywhere in the classification system also. Why? Because still there is a controversy regarding whether viruses are living or not. The reason is, viruses don't show any molecular movement when they are outside the body. Once they infect a living cell, using the machinery of the host, they start showing the symptoms of life or they start showing molecular movement. So since they are not showing any molecular movement, we call them as or we consider them as non-living. Why do we need molecular movements? Because in multicellular organisms, there is a very structured organization of the body. We know our basic functional unit is cell. Cells are modified into tissues. Tissues are grouped together to form organs. Organs form organ system and organ systems form organism. So there is a very structured organization. But it is not going to remain the same throughout. Because of the changing environmental effects, there can be disruption or the structure can break down. So from the time of our birth, our body has to constantly make efforts to repair the structure or the damage happening to this organization. So for all this, what is required? The molecular movement. So we are showing certain characteristic features or processes in our life to maintain the life or to maintain this repair and damage. So those processes together, all the processes maintaining life in a living organism are called the life processes. So what are the examples of life processes? Nutrition, respiration, excretion, transportation, reproduction, control coordination, etc. Nutrition is a very important life process for any living organism because we know without food we cannot survive. So how do we define nutrition? Nutrition is the process of transferring a source of energy from outside the body of the organism, that is food, to inside. That means we are taking food from outside and we are making it a part of our body. That process is called nutrition. Now, why do we need nutrition? To maintain our life, right? We need many vitamins, minerals and energy for sustaining our life. But simply by eating food, will we get energy? No. We know that energy is there in the food. But if we want to release that energy out of food, we need to go for the next life process, that is respiration. So once we get the nutrition in our body, we have to do respiration in order to release the energy out. So how can we define respiration? Respiration is the process of acquiring oxygen from outside the body. There also again oxygen is coming from outside, from the atmosphere. We are taking it inside and what do we use it for? To break down the food source. That means in our body, the food we are taking, after digestion, the carbohydrate will become glucose. Now we break down glucose. How can we break down glucose? Using oxygen. And we release the energy required for our life processes. For any processes to happen, energy is a must. So only through respiration we can derive energy. You know, organisms can be unicellular or multicellular. Suppose there is a unicellular organism like a amoeba. There is no specialized organ for doing nutrition or respiration or excretion. All the processes are done by a single cell. So, in this cell, the cell is in contact with the external environment. So, if it wants to exchange gases, diffusion is enough. What is diffusion? Movement of molecules from region of higher concentration to region of lower concentration. So, that can happen. Or if water has to come in, through osmosis it can come from higher concentration to lower concentration. So, unicellular organisms can meet their body functions by a simple process of diffusion. Then there comes the next question. Why is diffusion insufficient to meet the oxygen requirements of multicellular organisms like humans? We have a specialized respiratory organ and we know only through nostrils we can take in the oxygen. Why? Why can't we directly diffuse it? What is the reason? In the body of multicellular organisms, all cells are not in contact with the surrounding environment. If you see, our skin is in contact with the surrounding environment, but our internal organs, they are not in contact with the external environment. So, we cannot go for diffusion for exchange of gases. Now, nutrition is done. After nutrition, we break down the nutrient to release energy, so respiration is also done. Now, from the digestive system, after digestion, the nutrients should reach each and every cell of our body. If it goes to each and every cell of the body, then oxygen can break down. The same way, the oxygen that we are respiring from the lungs, it also has to reach every part of the body. So after respiration, what happens? Carbon dioxide is produced as a waste product. The carbon dioxide has to be brought to the lungs in order to exhale it out. Or the waste materials from our nitrogenous waste should go to our excretory system to excrete it out. So there comes the significance of the next life process, transportation, for movement of substances within the body. Without these transportation, nutrition and respiration are not possible. So they are interlinked. Now let us think about excretion. All these life processes are producing waste materials. These waste materials need to be removed timely from the body or it will become toxic to us. So we need the next life process, excretion also. So all these four life processes are discussed in the first chapter, life processes. Now let us concentrate on nutrition. Nutrition can be of two types, autotrophic nutrition and heterotrophic nutrition. So what is autotrophic nutrition? The nutrition in which, or the mode of nutrition in which organism can prepare its own food. You making use of the resources from outside or raw materials from outside. Whereas if the organisms are depending on other organisms for deriving their nutrition, such nutrition is called a heterotrophic nutrition. So these are two processes of nutrition. Whereas if the terminology is autotroph, what are autotrophs? The organism which can synthesize their own food are called autotrophs. Okay, so these two are different. This is the type of nutrition where the organism can prepare their own food, and the organisms which can prepare their own food are called autotrophs. So what are the examples of autotrophs? Green plants and photosynthetic bacteria. The same way, the process of obtaining nutrition from other organisms is called a heterotrophic nutrition, and the organisms which derive nutrition from other organisms are called a heterotrophs. Examples of heterotrophs are animals. Now we will study in detail first the autotrophic type of nutrition. We know the process required for autotrophic nutrition is photosynthesis. So look at the word meaning. Photo means what? Light. Synthesis means manufacturing or making. So making in presence of light. So plants can prepare food in presence of light. What do? They take outside raw materials like carbon dioxide and water. These are the two essential requirements to prepare food for the plants. Where do they obtain it from? From the outside source. That means carbon dioxide is present in the atmosphere. Through the stomata, the carbon dioxide is taken in. Water is present in the soil. Roots absorb water. So using these two raw materials, the plants prepare carbohydrate. which is the source of energy for them. For that, they need sunlight, because we know the ultimate energy for us is sun. So the energy from the sun is coming in which form? In the form of light energy. So the plants can capture light energy and they convert it into chemical energy. So ultimately the energy present in the food is nothing but the energy came from the sun. But who will capture the sunlight? Can we capture it? No. Plants can capture it. How? Because they have a green pigment called chlorophyll which can trap sunlight energy. Okay? So the overall process is called a photosynthesis. As a result of photosynthesis, what is produced? Carbohydrate. Carbohydrate is a general term for sugars. There are different types, very simple forms like a glucose or fructose, little more complex forms like a sucrose, lactose, or very complex ones like a starch, cellulose, etc. So these all are together called carbohydrates. Okay, so the product of photosynthesis is carbohydrate. Now, after that, the plant is preparing it, okay, it will use it, but some extra may be there. That has to be stored in the body of the plant. So, the stored form of carbohydrates in plants is starch. When we are consuming plants, we are deriving starch from the plants. Then the starch is broken down in our body to form glucose. We use it for our purposes. But again, if unused glucose is there, in our body the carbohydrates are stored in the form of glycogen. So, the stored form of carbohydrates in plants is starch and in animals it is glycogen. So, if we depict the whole process of photosynthesis in the form of an equation, we get like this. 6 molecules of carbon dioxide combines with the 12 molecules of water to form carbohydrate, then 6 molecules of oxygen, 6 molecules of water in the presence of sunlight and chlorophyll. We know sunlight is needed for getting energy and chlorophyll is the pigment that can absorb sunlight. So we can divide the photosynthetic stages into 3. The first stage, absorption of light energy by chlorophyll. Now after absorption, the chlorophyll cannot keep it in the form of light. It has to be converted in the form of some chemicals. So that process is the second step, conversion of light energy into chemical energy. During that process, one more reaction is happening within the plant, that is splitting of water. And when we split water, we know water is made up of hydrogen and oxygen. Then the oxygen is released out as a byproduct. So these two steps are the initial steps of photosynthesis, and this one takes place in the presence of light. So we call it as light reaction. But we know during photosynthesis carbohydrate has to form. That is happening in the next or the last stage where carbon dioxide is reduced to carbohydrate. This can happen independent of the presence of light. Whether light is present or absent, this process can go on. But the first 2 steps can happen only if light is present. So the first 2 steps are called a light reaction and the last step is called a dark reaction. Because that doesn't mean that it is happening in dark, but it is independent of light. Okay. So now why are we telling reduction of carbon dioxide to carbohydrate? You can see here carbon dioxide has carbon and oxygen, whereas carbohydrate has carbon, hydrogen and oxygen. So what is added? Hydrogen is added. So when hydrogen is added, we call that process as reduction. Hydrogen is removed, we call it as oxidation. In terms of oxygen also we can say oxygen added is oxidation, oxygen removed is reduction. So here we are talking in terms of hydrogen. So it is a reduction of carbon dioxide to carbohydrate. So these 3 steps are very important. But all the plants need not carry out these steps one after the other. Especially there are plants living in desert regions. What is their problem? They are struggling to get water. They are living in a water scarce region. So they cannot keep their stomata open during the daytime. If stomata is open to take up carbon dioxide, what happens? The water will evaporate off. that is called transpiration. So these plants keep their stomata closed during the daytime, and at night when the temperature is low, they open the stomata and take in carbon dioxide. But that time light is not available. So they make an intermediate compound and keep the carbon dioxide inside the body in the form of an acid, and later in the presence of light the photosynthesis will continue. So all plants need not carry out this one after the other. Now let us see the structure of a leaf, because we know leaf is the part of the plant where the photosynthesis is taking place. Now let us see the structure of a leaf. We are all familiar with the structure of leaf. Suppose this is a leaf, you know this green part is the leaf lamina or the leaf blade, and you can see the midrib on the leaf. But when I am drawing this, we are drawing the CS. CS means what? Cross section. Suppose I am cutting the leaf like this, and this thickness we are showing here. Okay, only this thickness. So there is a covering on the leaf on both surfaces, upper side and lower side, like how our body is covered by skin. So this covering is called a epidermis. So on the upper side there is upper epidermis, and the lower side we have lower epidermis. So when we are drawing, we will draw upper epidermis, lower epidermis, and what are the cells coming in between. So first we have to draw the upper epidermis. You can draw rectangular cells like this in your book. Suppose if you are using a ruled book, you can make use of almost 6 to 8 lines for this diagram. And we can draw a thick layer of cuticle over it. Because some leaves have a layer of waxy coating called a cuticle on the upper epidermis to reduce the rate of transpiration. So this is the upper epidermis with a cuticle. Okay, now we can draw the lower epidermis also. But when we are drawing lower epidermis, we are showing some stomata on it, because in dicot plants mostly stomata are located on the lower epidermis. Okay, but there is no cuticle. And one more thing, when you are drawing diagram, better you draw to left side, so that you will get enough space on the right side to label the diagram. Now we will draw the midrib. So when we are cutting a leaf, we will get a cross section of a midrib also, so that we can draw here, which is circular in outline. These are called the bundle sheath cells, not very important for you. And here you will see xylem will be there. We know xylem is the conducting tissue for conducting water and minerals, and here you will find the phloem cells. What is the function of phloem? Phloem is to conduct the prepared food materials. So xylem conducts water and minerals, phloem conducts food materials, and these two together form the vascular bundle. Now we have to draw the cells present in between in the leaf, between upper epidermis and lower epidermis. All the cells coming together are called the mesophyll cells. Meso means in between, phyll means leaves. Mesophyll means in between the leaves. Okay, but now here when we are seeing the leaf, you know that upper part of the leaf is usually dark green compared to the lower surface. Why? Because in the upper surface the cells are compactly arranged, whereas in the lower surface they are loosely packed. So we will draw here elongated cells like this. Okay, and these cells contain chlorophyll. How will you mark chlorophyll? Like dots. Okay, but when you are drawing these dots, you have to be careful. If you are drawing a cell like this, you have to put dots only to the periphery that represents chlorophyll. But if you are simply putting like this, it can either represent the reserve food material or cytoplasm. So here we have to draw like this, only to the corners. The same way, it has to be there in all the cells. The same way, lower part has loosely packed cells. They also have chloroplast in them. Okay, so they also have chloroplast. Chloroplast is the organelle which contains chlorophyll pigment in them. Now, two things you have to be careful. Here when you are drawing, don't leave the cells just like that. They should be attached to one another. See. And also, there should be space opposite to stomata because some space is required for gaseous exchange. Look at the diagram of the leaf. Now it is complete. So when you are labeling, make sure that you are labeling everything from one side. Okay, so this is cuticle, upper epidermis, palisade cells. These compactly arranged elongated cells are called palisade, and the lower loosely packed cells are called spongy cells. Together we call them as mesophyll cells. Then vascular bundle, which consists of xylem and phloem. Lower epidermis, which has got stomata in it. So this is how you have to draw the cross section of a leaf.